Yeah.
I asked Dave if he'd give me a few lines to introduce him, and I got back this morning. I asked my nieces. I said, "Uncle Dave is weird, fun and weird. He doesn't put lipstick on, and he drinks a drink that looks like bogies." So that's what we're going with.
Yeah, I like that.
Would you say that sums you up perfectly?
Well, I probably ought to clear up the unpleasant bit, the drink. It's because I was drinking a blended sort of smoothie of spinach and kale, and they did actually all taste it, despite the fact that they thought it looked disgusting. So, but yeah, the weird, fun, weird thing, I was okay with that. I thought it was them droning on about business stuff and whatever. Anyway, there you go. So yeah, I'm good with that. It works for me.
Yeah, I like that.
It was honest. It just came. I love that. Kids are brilliant. They just say, there was no agenda to it. I said, I'm doing an interview today, and the lady needs a bio. How would you describe Uncle Dave? Bang, and it came out like that. And I thought, yeah, well, in this moment, let's go with it.
Yeah. I think you got off lightly. I'd be a little bit hesitant to ask my nieces and nephews that question. Like you say,
yeah, it's a fun thing, because they don't mean the problem when you ask people for feedback about stuff. And we'll probably end up talking a bit about this. Is that straight away they go into process mode and they start intellectualizing it without realizing it and working out what it is that they think you want and all of that. And kids don't do that. They just tell you, bang, you look fat, you look stupid, that looks nice. There's no angle on it. It's just like, here's some facts for you. I love that. I think that's really cool.
That's so true. I've got a 5-year-old, so I know exactly what you mean.
It's brilliant. And I mean, if I'm writing something or I'm planning something, I'll give it to the boys. I'll give it to the children and say, what do you think of that? And they'll look at it and go, that's boring. Oh, okay. Why do you think it's boring? Well, I wouldn't want to do that. That isn't fun. Why don't you do, and then they'll say, oh, why don't you do that thing you said the other day? That sounded like fun. That was interesting. And I tell you what, they're really good at as well. They're very good at picking up on inauthenticity. So I'll write something, I'll say something, and my eldest son will go, no, that doesn't sound like you.
Yeah.
So what do you mean? He said, that sounds like something you've read. That's not how you describe it. And okay, well, what do you think I would say? Oh, what do you say this kind of thing? And he says it, and it's like, oh yeah, actually that is what I would say if I wasn't, busy trying to influence or impress or all the other nonsense that we get caught up in when we're trying to, do something in the world. Anyway, so there we go.
No, I love that, and it's actually really relevant to the kind of stuff that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, I think so.
So, yeah, the reason we're talking is we're kind of going to talk around marketing, aren't we? And one of the reasons we're talking is I've got a real sense that you've kind of seen or experienced something different around this area. And it's really making a difference in the way you work or the results you're getting or something like that. So
yes, that's true.
So with that very vague introduction, would you like to just talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, okay. So in the sort of context of coaching or consulting or training or any of those kind of sub-brands, if you like, however who's listening identifies themselves, if you like. There's a lot of very mixed feeling, and I think quite a lot of misunderstanding about marketing and how to relate to it.
Yeah.
And the reason I thought it might be useful is because I've come from being quite clear about it to becoming quite confused about it to becoming quite clear again. So it's been a kind of like a whole circle, and I thought that might be useful to talk about during this. So I guess if I go back to when I got into business, So I got into business coming out of education. So I had no real sort of formal training background, and I had basically a lot of a lot of opinions, which I think I probably saw as ideas, but I think they were opinions really, and quite, you know, just quite a lot of get up and go. It was something I really wanted to do and transition. So I didn't really come from any theoretical background. It was very much a follow your instincts, follow your nose. But I didn't know it was that either. I didn't have any of this awareness. I just did stuff. It was a very unsophisticated process. Mm-hmm. And some of it worked and some of it didn't. Mm-hmm. And then when I left being employed and kind of went out on my own, I think I had an experience that a lot of people had, that in the early days, I found it quite easy to get clients. And I've spoken to a lot of people who do that. Within your community of friends or colleagues or ex-colleagues or whatever, you have people who are probably quite willing to work with you. And so to start with, it was very good and it went very easily, and that was nice. You know, I was making good money, working less hours, and it all kind of looked rosy. But then that sort of dries up, and if you haven't got a through flow of people, of fresh potential clients, then your business can dry quite quickly. And I think a lot of people have that experience. Yeah. So somehow I came across some people who looked like they were really good at marketing in the coaching world, and spent quite a lot of time, quite a lot of cash, but really didn't get particularly good results at all. And I'm not saying it's because what I was told was wrong or whatever, but somehow it wasn't clicking. It wasn't, you know, the thing when something shifts on the inside of you and you go, oh, that makes sense, I can do that now. That wasn't happening at all. So I had loads of like bookish theoretical knowledge of how you might do something. So I could describe the process, but I couldn't do it. And somehow it was almost like I'd lost the ability to make it up as I was going along, which is what I was doing before. So I was in a bit of a no man's land really for a while. And then, oh, and stop me if I'm just waffling, because I will just talk. So do that, yeah.
No, this is brilliant.
Sometime last year, I watched a video snippet which lasted, I don't know, about 27 seconds or something like that, and I just reached straight for the buy button. It was like the person was speaking beyond all the stuff that I've been taught as theory, and it just kind of like landed in me. And I wanted to take action. It was like, yeah, I want to do this. That makes complete and total sense for me. That's where I am. Yes, I'm there. And I thought, that's interesting, because I could probably sub-analyze what this guy was doing and kind of try and make some theory out of it. But nothing about what he was doing fitted in that bracket that I'd known of, you know, like, oh, here's how you introduce it, and then you have another layer and all that kind of theoretical stuff. And I thought, I remember sort of anecdotally thinking in the autumn last year, I think I'm going to start to see marketing differently. And that's a really nice place to be, because I was very wedded to what I thought I knew, and that's a really good way of blocking any new ideas coming in. Yeah. Gripping on to where you think you are just really has that stifling impact on seeing things fresh and getting new ideas and inspiration and the aha moments. And I think it just started from there. I noticed things changing, and I noticed that the first thing I noticed was when I was talking to people one-to-one, I felt more settled, and I felt happier about sharing things the way I quite like to share them, which is a little bit rambly at times and can get unpunky and whatever, but I really don't mind that. And I just kind of settled into my groove, if you like. And I noticed that people on the receiving end seemed quite happy with that too. So it meant I got a better connection or a better experience of the connection that's already there. Perhaps that's a tidier way of saying it. Had a better experience of that connection with people really quite quickly. And fundamentally, to me, that seemed to be just because I was better connected to myself. You know, I wasn't in my head and trying to theorize and whatever. I was just really, I guess, a little bit like I'm doing now, just going with what's coming up during the moment. And people seem to really like that, and it led quite quickly to people saying, "Well, what do you do?" And I talk a little bit about that, and then get them to tell me a little bit about where they were. Now, all of this you could map out and sounds like a process, yeah? And if you look at any kind of marketing 101 or the courses that are sold, you're going to see roughly the same thing. But the crunch, the big difference, when you're doing it, if you like, from the inside out, so you're just doing it, it has a really nice, easy feel and whatever. And when you're trying to reverse engineer it backwards, it can be a bit more clunky, and I think that's where people get really stuck. So that it's not coming through them naturally in a way that people will recognize, whether they read it on a page, listen to a podcast, or standing having a drink together. And that's really what I wanted out of my marketing, was that people would get to know me, and then they could go, "Oh, well, you're a person who can help me or not." And that's really all I wanted, something very clean, very simple.
Yeah. I think that's such an important point, Dave, because really what you're saying is that it's the connection that makes everything else possible. And then to break down, say you have a really good experience of signing up clients after you get a connection with them. If you were then to break down the process of what exactly you did in creating the connection, and then present that as a process for somebody else to adopt, it's kind of missing the key bit, which is the you in it and the connection.
Yeah. And to be really clear, that doesn't imply that I think process is a waste of time. No, I don't at all. I think it's really, really useful as a sort of, as like a framework. But mostly what happens is that people, well, this is my experience anyway now, is that people go on courses and they learn the process, but they then don't they don't invest in internalizing that process. And kind of, what's the phrase they use on X Factor? You know, make it their own, or you know, it's that kind of thing. So processes look like processes, but if you really look at a process and think, okay, what is that? That was somebody else's inspiration captured in time.
Yeah.
That's all it was. You know, there isn't really a thing called process. There's the action that somebody took that was probably inspired action, and then they looked at it and went, "Oh wow, well that was good. That got a great result. I wonder what I did." Because if I knew what it was I did, I could probably do that again, and hopefully I'd get the same result again, and maybe I could scale that, and that would be a nice thing to do. So it all sort of fits logically, but if you miss out that key piece of really connecting, because out of connection comes real intelligence and real insight. That's the thing. And you go on marketing courses, particularly internet marketing courses, and they'll say, you know, research your clients. And I remember hearing people say that and thinking, yeah, I could do that, but you know, actually, I just want to share my knowledge. And I really couldn't see my ego in that, and that might make me sound desperately naive. So, you know, there we are. Maybe I was, but I couldn't see my ego in, I just want to share my knowledge.
Yeah.
And then when I really started to settle down, I thought, gosh, that's so missing the point. That's really disrespectful of where people are in their worlds. You've got this notion that you know more. That's so missing the point in coaching. Don't do that. that's a bit yuck. And you know, I was a bit sort of embarrassed. I wanted to phone people that I'd spoken to before and go, I'm really sorry about what I might have said over the last couple of years. What a daft Wally. You know, I'm sorry. I was doing my best at the time, but I was really in my head and full of other ideas. And you know, and actually, can I hear about you and where you are? Because that's way more interesting than anything.
Oh,
and it goes back to like the buyer. Sorry?
I was saying only you and every other one of us gets in our head and does that.
Oh, yeah.
I was just thinking it plays out both ways because, and I mean, either way it's ego, because you can go in thinking you know more than somebody and you want to share the knowledge, or you can go in feeling incredibly nervous and thinking, oh, what will they think of me, and am I coming across right, and whatever, and either way it ends up being about you. And actually,
that's brilliant. That's such a good distinction for people because so let's cut through the fluffy and let's get into the contentious land, right? So there's loads of people who are again, this is my experience, who are saying, oh, I'm not building my coaching practice because I feel so insecure and I'm so not confident and I need to work on myself. And that's so ego-based, and it's really hard to see when you're stuck in it.
Yeah, it is.
It's really difficult because if you look at what ego really is, or for me at the simplest level, it's what you think about yourself that you think is true. It's entirely made up. It's a psychological condition. It doesn't exist really, but it appears real because of how the mind works. And so it's those stories that we tell ourselves that we then buy into, and we then, you know, portray them or project them, that's the word I'm looking for, into the world. And then we go, there, you see, it's all true. And you can't see that you're the one projecting it. It's hilarious, really.
Yeah.
And that kind of downtrodden victim story, you know, and if this sounds harsh to people, I'm really sorry, but you know, it's worth hearing it somewhere, so it might as well be here. That victim story of, oh, poor me, I could never be good enough. It's like no, you want to get through that as fast as you possibly can and see that's an ego business saying, I can transform your business in the next 20 seconds with my wisdom. You know, that's. But you're spot on. They're two sides of the same coin, and actually that's kind of okay too. It's only when you think it's an issue that it causes you an issue.
Yeah,
it really doesn't matter that much.
And I'm laughing because I was definitely on the poor me side of it for quite a while.
Oh yeah, but do you know that the interesting thing is that you know, I think loads of us, regardless of whether people think you're confident, not confident, you know, you can turn anything into victim mode in the psychological mind. It's really, you know, for a while people have always said to me, you're really confident, so I made that some kind of poison to stab myself with. I mean, it's hilarious. You really can make up any old crap you want to and then start living it out and go, you see, this is true for me. But it's that me part. When we're talking about that me, that's really not who we are. That's the psychological illusion of who we are. And of course, when we're working with our clients, that's what we're helping them to see through that illusion of the story they're telling. Yeah. They're perpetuating in the real world and opening the doors to something, you know, newer, fresher, way more inspiring and more beautiful. And so this is the irony for coaches, is that they've got experience of doing that with their clients, but they'd be utterly buggered if they could do it for themselves. Yeah. You know, because you can't kind of see through your own noise until you do, and then when you do it, it's like, oh yeah, that was just rubbish, wasn't it? I was making all that up. I don't have to buy that. Oh cool, I can start getting genuinely interested in the people I want to work with. I can start experimenting with writing styles. I can start speaking perhaps differently in an interview. And so when people say, you know, you want to play, that's what they mean. That's where they're pointing towards. But often I hear people say that, treat it like play, as if it's an instruction. Well, it'll only be like play if it feels like play. It's got to come naturally from the inside, you know, and that could take, somebody could get an insight listening to this, and it could take 2 years, who knows?
Yeah.
That looks like a lottery to me, so I just don't pay a lot of attention to it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much in what you said. One of the things that I just wanted to kind of come back to is, it's like that. It's almost like 180-degree turn, and once you stop, you know, however inadvertently, stop looking at you and making it about you, and just get really interested in, you know, whatever it is that the other person's up against, or they're not seeing, or they're trying to solve, then a lot of that kind of noise and that making it about you falls away anyway, doesn't it? And it frees you to make a real difference to the other person. And as you say, to try lots of different things, because you suddenly see that whether they work or whether they don't isn't actually saying anything about you anyway. You've not got a horse in the race, kind of thing. You're not.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like that you've not got a horse in the race. That's a really nice metaphor. I think some of it comes down to like where your base level is, what you know for sure, what you can hang your hat on, not what you believe, not what you value, not what you think has been true for you for a long time. Identity, in other words. You want to get through all of that and look for truth. Yeah. And one of the things that I've seen time and time again as truth, both for me and for my clients, is this genius potential that exists within all of us. And so the only thing I need to know, in a sense, is that that's there. And the really good news is that, as much as I can be a bit of a daft brush at times, the genius potential doesn't care whether I'm on form or not. It has no interest in that. It's completely impersonal. And that, when I really started to see that, that was game changing, because it meant that I didn't have to fix anything anymore. Neither did I have to turn not fixing into a process, because it's easy to do that as well, to take something and go, oh, okay, so I need to develop curiosity. Okay, well, I'll find a course on curiosity then, and I'll sign up for that, you know. $89, 6 weeks online, great, yes, and by the end of it I'll be curious. Well, curiosity is wired into the system. When the noise turns off, you spoke about that. It's already there. And it's already there whether it's noisy or not. So this genius potential or innate wisdom or spirit, or however you want to, you know, or whatever you want to frame it as, that's there in all of us all of the time. Whether we think it is or whether we think it isn't, it's always there. And so you just get a feel for that, or a sense of that. To me, it has a sound. I appear to be quite auditory, so I hear it in people's voices, and it's like, yeah, that thing that you said there, that was cool. Tell me more about that. And it catches people usually. They're like, yeah, I don't know. And then it comes to them. It's like, oh, well, actually, it's this, and they're back in the game. And you know, there's really nothing much for you to do there. Not that you're not doing anything, but there's nothing much to do, because that's already there. It doesn't care whether you're getting your language patterns or however you've been trained, whichever school of coaching you come through. It doesn't care about any of that. Yeah. It's there all the time, burning like this unextinguishable candle until the candle finally goes out. You know, it's always it's like a pilot light. And in a sense, we're almost the thermostatic control on the heating system. And you can kind of play with it until you get the temperature right. But that pilot light does not go out, ever. As crap as the world can look, or as falsely great as the world can look, the pilot light is always on, which means the boiler can be ignited at a moment's notice. And knowing that is I think the best thing I know of all things.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the analogy. Yeah, that rings really true to me. And I guess the two things are, there's such freedom in that to do whatever, to show up, to make the phone call, to take whatever action you need to, rather than waiting until you feel a certain way or trying to fix a problem that it really looks like you need to fix before you do the next thing. But also, I guess, when you've got that, depending on which, what's your system preference, when you've got that nose for that, I love what you called it, genius potential in somebody else, when you've got an eye for it, an ear for it, whatever it is, and you see that in them.
Well,
that's like,
yeah, I mean,
point.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? And I remember, there's a coach who I admire a lot, and he talks a lot about coaching high achievers. And for a while, I'd sort of pondered in my head, I wonder what he means by that. I wonder what his definition, if you like. And he never really talks about that much. And then in the last couple of months, I read something, just anecdotally, that he'd written, and he defined what he meant by that, and it was exactly what I think I've just described as genius potential. I like that phrase. I've never used it before, but I think I might stick with it. I like it.
Yeah.
But you can't fake that, and I did try and do that for quite a long time. So again, to anybody who might be listening who's been subjected to me faking that, sorry. Genuinely, I was having a go at doing my best, but it was pants. Yeah.
Sorry, were you faking your genius potential, or faking that you could see it in other people?
Yeah, faking that I could see it in other people completely. Yeah. And the real reason behind that is that I couldn't see it in me. It's really hard to see something in others that you don't know is there in yourself.
That is
really difficult.
That's when it happens, isn't it? There's no until you see it in you, you don't really realise that it's in everybody.
That's it. And so therein is the piece for marketing, right? Until you know your and I got to be careful here, because until you know sounds like a gap people should have. But all these things are instant, and I'm making them all up there. I'm trying to describe what doesn't exist as if it exists.
Yeah.
So you can't even say I'm pointing you in a direction, because you are the direction. It's seeing through whatever your own story is. So sorry about that, my line dropped. The last couple of sentences I think you were asking. I was saying that when you hear things, if you like, from the inside out through yourself, you find yourself going, oh, that's what Michael was saying, or Rich was saying, or Jamie was saying, or Dave was saying, or Emma was saying, or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, now I get that. Now that makes sense for me, or that feels right for me, or I see it, or I hear it, or whatever your sensory, expressionary preference is. So that's the inside out piece. It's like, oh, okay, so when they're saying, it's good to lead with this, or it's useful to do that, that makes sense. That's what appears in the moment. I get that. And so if you kind of then, so once you've kind of flipped that imaginary switch, probably if I played, this recording back, or when you play it back, probably people could go, oh yeah, well that was Dave doing X, Y, Z. I learned that on course, whatever. Yeah, he probably did that too. And it would look like that from the outside. But from the inside, it's a little bit different, and it's that difference that's the key component. That's the bit that helps people go, oh, do you know what? I want to run a workshop for, I don't know, salesmen who are overweight, who've got no time during the day to eat and drink healthily, and I want to make it simple for them so that they can do it and fit it into their schedule. Right? How do I do that? And that's where it comes. And once you've sort of seen that, somebody can throw anything at you, and you'll go, oh, okay, yeah, well, you could try this. And when people are coaching you on it, that's what they're trying to do for you. But until you've seen it, it's just like, it's more noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, and that's it exactly. It makes me think of the what we were talking about at the start about reverse engineering, because the kind of courses you were referring to that teach marketing, you know, the answer to creating a 6 or 7 figure income or whatever it is, they're the product of somebody else's insight, and to try and adopt all of the different bits and pieces, it is creating more noise in the system. But online people can't sell insight because they don't know when it's going to show up for you.
Let me give you a really tangible example, because yeah, I want to kind of be clear that I don't really think there's anything wrong with these courses at all. It's just that what you'll come away with is a knowledge of the framework, and that can be quite handy. But what you won't necessarily come away with, depending on the course, etc., is how that's going to work for you. And I think what people go expecting to get is how that's going to work for themselves, and then they come away with a framework, and then there's a frustration gap because they can't implement, because no change has taken place. So every coach on the planet, I guess, knows that coaching is transformational, however they frame that or see it, and yet it's so easy to overlook that piece when you're learning for yourself and expect it can be done to you. So you're sitting in a room hoping that marketing could be done to you. Well, good luck with that. It won't work. But the moment you see it and you start to experience yourself as a marketer, you know, which I kind of think of as finding your voice, then so the story I told on a thing I did recently was I sing. I'm a musician, and my voice naturally is sort of bass baritone. But in a choir that I sing in, that my wife conducts, she really needed a tenor, which is the higher male voice. And she said, "Can you sing that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. It'll be a bit croaky, but I'll have a go." I was quite curious about whether I could or not. So I started singing it, and to start with, I was singing tenor like a bass would sing tenor. And then I was reading something, I don't know, on somewhere, it doesn't really matter, but it suddenly dawned on me, I wonder what I sound like as a tenor rather than a bass pretending to be a tenor. So I bought a sort of little singing course, whatever, which helped you develop the upper register of your voices. And it's actually the guy who coached, what's he called, Sam Smith, the guy who trained him, has this sort of online course. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So all of a sudden I'm singing in the upper register, but I'm still sort of singing like a bass, because in my head I'm still a bass. Yeah, I think I'm a bass, so I'm behaving like a bass. And then suddenly there's a tipping point where I start to hear a different sound, and it's a bit freaky. It's like, oh, I don't sound like that. Who's that? Who's this in my voice box? Oh, not sure about that. And I'm like, oh, hang on, that's because I don't know what I sound like yet. And then it flips from being, you know, I'm faking it as a bass trying to sing tenor to, oh my goodness, I'm becoming a tenor. Now I know what David Kibby sounds like singing as a tenor. Wow, this is a whole new, and that triggered something in my head about marketing as well. It was like, well, I know what David Kibby sounds like when he's mimicking the style of Jamie Smart as a marketer, but I wonder what David Kibby sounds like as a marketer, or a podcaster, or an author, or whatever. And it's like, oh wow, hang on, I don't know that yet. Wow, that's fun, that's exciting. That I found real energy in that. Oh, I don't know. That's somewhere I can enjoy and go and explore and play and screw up and get right and go wrong and get right and do all the things that, you know, we normally do in business, because that's how it works as far as I can see. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And it's making me smile, because it makes me think of all the times that I've moved into a new area, and for a while I've just heard all these phrases coming out of my mouth that don't belong to me at all. And like, if I accidentally use them like around my friends or family, they're like, who is that? You don't say that. And I've realised that because I haven't got my own words or
Yeah,
my own form of
yeah.
expression for that particular area of life or whatever it is. I've ended up kind of borrowing somebody else's, and they're just not me at all. I mean,
No, and that's like really normal. You know, we've all been doing that since children. My boys are 9 and 11. I always fit in some stories about my children, as you well know, when I'm rambling. So,
yeah.
and I'm watching the 11-year-old particularly. He likes watching stuff and a lot of American stuff on YouTube, and so all of a sudden he's started going up at the end of his sentences, and it's like so I find myself going, when did you start doing that? And it's like, hang on, and even saying things like, I caught myself there saying, I start going like, I don't say that. Where's that from? It's like, who's in here? I don't know who's in here. So it doesn't really matter. You know, we don't want to get preoccupied by this, but part of what has people go, yes, I want to work with you, is when your pilot light is so apparent to them that they experience their pilot light. So it's that point, at least that's my kind of clunky return back to the metaphor before. It's when both of you stop thinking you're the central heating system, and your pilot lights co-spark, and that's the magic bit. And beyond that, then it becomes about structure, which nowadays I tend to try and do collaboratively, because it just means there's less pretend pressure for me. You know, it's just like, well, and it gets people early on to really invest in, you know, beyond writing you hopefully a fairly healthy check. It's like, well, you know, what would you want to do? What would work? It could look like this. It could be that. And so elements of other people's structure do come into that in a sense. But also, I look at some other people's structures and I'm like, well, that to me looks like it's based around their schedule and not based around what their client really wants. I don't want that. So I've moved away from trying to do that and looking at like completely bespoke scheduling that me and my client, prospective client, we thrash out together, and then I price it accordingly, like a builder would come round and quote you for an extension or whatever. These are all very normal business practices, but until you see them as like your voice, your thing, your way, the way, and you'll hear people say that. You'll hear people say, "Oh, run the business your way." Well, from the outside, that looks like a pressure, but from the inside, it's like, "Oh my goodness, this is my business. I can do what the heck I like. Yeah. This is my marketing. I can do what the heck I like. I can write the way I want. I can have the headline I want. I can start with a headline of, whatever I want to start it with. It can be as contagious, antagonistic, as fluffy, as gentle. There's no rules other than those I make. Mm-hmm. And then there's the measure of the results that I'm going to generate from this, which is a fairly good feedback mechanism as well, you know. All very well being totally authentic and outrageous or whatever, but if nobody wants to work with you, that's probably not a great plan either. So in there is your own, it's like being a chef. It's the same thing, you know, you can read recipe books forever, but you want to get in the kitchen, you want to bake, and you want to work out your combination of ingredients that has people say, yeah, well, I'd like a cake, but I want Emma's cake, because her cake's like, whoa, I love that cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. It makes me think of all the things as you said, all the things you read or hear, but you don't really hear them until you do. Like that, it's your business, do it your way. And as you said, you could feel that like a pressure, or it could just be words, and you know, your kind of intellect goes, yeah, I know that, and kind of moves along looking for something, you know, the next piece of information that'll help you or whatever. But it's the freedom you experience when you actually see it for yourself.
Yeah, and when you're and so here's the big one that makes this challenging, I see, for people, is that they feel, in inverted commas, under pressure to generate income, and that's where the mind gremlins come in, you know, and often people have stopped. They've had an amazing experience themselves, so in self-discovery, something's brought them to a course or to a coach or something. They've had an incredible experience, and now, compared to what they do in the daytime, this seems like really, really cool work. So it's like, oh, well, I want to be a coach. There's no massive barrier to entry into being a coach or whatever. The analogy I gave a client the other day was it's a little bit like, you know, one of our toilets at home went wrong, and so I'm not great with DIY. I'm probably a little bit lazy about it as well, in truth. And so I phoned our guy, and he came around and he went, oh yeah, that's straightforward. It's this, that, and the other. So kind of what my analogy was, I could have then suddenly gone, oh, I want to be a plumber. I don't want anyone to have the inconvenience I've had. And I've seen plumbing in action, and I know about pipes. So I will set up a website and I will become a plumber. And actually, I'm going to go into commercial plumbing because I know that's where the money is. And if you tell somebody that story, it sounds like total madness. And yet there are coaches sitting there today trying that business plan. And then somebody's telling them, oh yeah, it's because you don't feel good about yourself. It's like, no, it's a crap plan. That's why it's not working. It's not because you've got esteem issues. It's like you could be utterly pumped and you'd struggle to execute that one. You know, there's some, to be respectful about stuff, there's some things that you probably ought to know. And it's just having, I don't think I'm great on humility now, but I so had no humility. It's just like, bull in China shop, you know. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. I know that business. I've been a CEO. Oh yeah. I'll tell people my story, and quite clearly they will come running to my door. and you know, I remember talking to Michael Neal about that, and he said, look, relatively to the books I've had published and whatever, I do get people phone up, but my phone isn't ringing all day. I'm not sure how you're expecting to do this in 7 months. You know, forgive me. And it was a beautiful way of saying, you arrogant git. Yeah. But you can't see that until you see it. You know, it's just like, oh, whatever. You brush it off, and you know, I got back to shining my ego. It was great. Yeah. And it's funny now looking back at it, but it wasn't funny at the time. No. You know, but it is funny now. I can laugh a little bit anyway.
Yeah. I'm thinking about going back to something that we've touched on, but we didn't talk about it a lot, which is, in fact, I interrupted you. You said that you noticed things changing, and you talked about the first thing that changed, and then we went off on a, you know, quite enjoyable tangent. But just to come back to that, I would be interested to hear about the next things that changed. But I also wanted to. I also wanted to pick up on the fact that on something you said about when you got better connected to yourself, and as a result you had a better experience of the connection that's already there between us and other people, it allowed them to actually get to know you. Yeah. And I'd love to hear some more of your thoughts on that, because I think it's a really important area.
Okay, well, let's start with that one, actually, because I think that is important. I could see, but I wouldn't admit that my mode of operation was fundamentally to think that I knew a lot of stuff, and that if people would spend time with me, I could impart some of it to them, and they would do better. And that sounds hideous, I know, listening to myself saying it, but it sounds terrible, but genuinely that's where I was operating from. So, and I really couldn't see, again, this is shocking to hear it, but I'm actually quite pleased I'm saying it. So I really couldn't see that the only thing in that was me. I really couldn't. I really thought I was, you know, into service and all these other great phrases that I hear, and I really couldn't see that it was all entirely about me. And I can't remember what twigged me to it, but first of all, I felt quite sick when I first realised that was the flip side of ego. That was the embarrassment thing. And then I tried to deny it for a while, so that was good, and justify it. And then slowly, that seemed to sort of melt away, and nothing changed, but everything was different. I suddenly started to notice that when I was with people, I really was interested in what they were saying. Mm-hmm. I wasn't having to ask 10 really good questions to pretend to be interested. It was like, no, tell me more about that. That's interesting, because and then it became more natural to say, oh well, I had a bit of an experience like that, and they seemed interested in what I had to say, and it completely changed. I realised what a communicative numpty I was, and I'd always thought I was quite good at communication, and it was something like, you know nothing about communication other than one-way traffic, and it was like, oh, so again. What was lovely about that, apart from having to eat quite a lot of humble crumble, was it gave me somewhere to go. From my position of utter arrogance, there's nowhere to go. And then suddenly it was like, do you know what? I'm not great at this. Well, that's cool, because I like learning. I really enjoy learning. It fascinates me. I didn't really enjoy learning so much as a youngster, so that's been more of an exploration of the last 10 years. I really enjoy learning. I enjoy, as best I can, trying to share what I know with people in a way that's half useful. All that kind of stuff. I genuinely enjoy, and all of a sudden I started to feel things that I don't think I'd felt for a long, long time. And it was like, I really enjoyed teaching. I used to be a teacher, but I had a lot of stories about that. And it was like, I got rushes of memory from the past of like, moments, and even talking now, I've gone really goosebumpy. It's like I felt like I can't even describe this very well, Emma, but I felt like I was dropping out of the story of who I thought I was and dropping into more of who I am beyond that. And that was just like a really easy place to connect from and talk to people from. There really wasn't anything to do in that space at all, other than it was like, oh, so this notion of prospecting just completely shifted. It was I like social media, so people who know me will see I battle around on Facebook a lot. And I got really into Instagram when I was dieting and stuff after Christmas, and made some good connections. I got really into Twitter, and managed to get like a small video message off Gary Vaynerchuk, who's like my social media hero, and so lots of stuff like that. It was playful, it was gameful. And it was just me hanging out, doing what I like doing. And so again, when people say, it'll be effortless, it's like, well, what the hell does that mean until you experience it? So just kind of describe what you were asking about.
Completely. What you said about, dropping out of the story of who you thought you were and how things changed then, that's it exactly for me. So I love the way you said that. I do also want to say that I think you're being incredibly hard on yourself about what you were like before, because I think that's only like you, me, and probably nearly everybody else who'll be listening to this.
Yeah. I mean, that's really kind of you to say, and I think what's really nice and is refreshing about this. I'm just going through a tunnel, so I'll just pause for a second.
Yeah.
Is stopping looking for a cure. So probably in a year's time, 2 years' time, if I listen back to that, I'll just know. Oh, well, that's more story, that's more nonsense, whatever, I've seen through that, whatever. That's okay. I hadn't seen that, how perfect I was trying to be in my own mind. I really hadn't seen that, and I hadn't seen the pressure that I was putting myself under to live up to this fake thing called reputation. The reputation doesn't exist, it's a psychological condition. Yeah. And I was really, and I still am, which is nice. You just pointed me to something else. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the beating up story thing that I think I've handled. So that's bollocks. But that's there's an ease about that now, when it's just like, well, yeah, there we are. That's nice, because that's a leveler. That makes me the same as the person opposite me. That doesn't matter. So change points. Can I talk about that? Is that all right?
Of course you can, yeah.
You asked about change points, yeah. So another big change point, the seeing the video was one. Another big one was, I used to read other people's sales copy or stuff, and my head would start commenting on it instantly. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, I don't know why they do that. Oh no, why do they? Oh no, and I couldn't see this at all. This is really hideous. It's just like, oh no, I don't know why Rich writes like that. Oh, that's so insincere. Blah 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 blah. And then one day I caught myself doing it, and it was like, you've got a lot of opinions, boy, about this. So how many opinions must you have about your own stuff? So no wonder you're struggling to express yourself. And that's literally what came into my head. It was like, oh my, I was going to say fuck then, but then I thought maybe I shouldn't. But anyway, I just did. So it was like, oh God, how much noise is in here. No wonder you're reticent. If that's how you're criticizing the outside world, what the heck will you do to yourself if you screw up? No wonder you don't want to let people into your world if that's the price you think you've got to pay. But what you can't see is you're making all of that up and then living by it. And that was like the ceiling just came in when that occurred. That was like, well, if I thought that was the punishment on offer, I'd hide away too. So you could probably stop that. And literally, it was, and then the day I really noticed that had stopped was I read something of somebody's, and I kind of went, that's nice. I'm not sure I want to write like that, but I see that is good. That works for them. That's nice. I like that. And it was like, oh yes, yes, that's freer. Oh God, thank heavens. You know, it's a relief in a sense when that changes. And that I think that just, when people talk permission to be themselves, again, all these phrases you hear, I've heard myself say them. Like, I had no clue what it meant. I had no internal reference point.
Me too.
But it was like, oh wow, well I could just try and hang out, wrong phrase, but you know, whatever. Just more genuinely with people, and oh, that's a relief. That's quite fun. And you can learn from there. It's very different. It's very difficult to learn when you're obsessed with self-monitoring. You know, that's hard. Yes. That's hard work, and that's people will get demotivated in that thinking space.
Yeah, it's as you were talking. I'm struggling to put this into words. All at once, I had the realization of that I used to operate a very similar way, and that felt a little bit uncomfortable. But you've also put words to something that I've noticed happening, but I hadn't actually thought about what was involved, which was they're kind of the same thing. Once me stopping being critical, as in critiquing other people's stuff, and me being able to express myself kind of have happened at the same time, and I've only just really considered that and realised
that's exactly it.
What you said makes perfect sense. If we're subjecting ourselves to kind of criticism from 100 different angles at the same time, you can't win. You just absolutely, it induces a kind of paralysis, really. And as that drops away, you see as you say, the loveliness or the beauty or the intent behind what other people do, and it becomes very easy to express your own, or easier.
Yeah, that's the nail on the head. Again, you hear people talking about loving yourself, but mostly when I hear people talking about that, energetically they're talking about it as if it's a to-do list, like an affirmation to-do list. Today I will write all the things I'm thankful for, and in that energetic space, you know, I'm thankful. I'm so grateful for my family. I'm so grateful for the love. It means diddly squat. But when that comes out of you authentically and genuinely, you do, I'm being metaphoric, but you do sink into that space of going, wow, actually, I really am thankful for seeing all of this. I could have blustered through the next 40 years in the same manner, and I've woken up just like a tiny little bit. Now that waking up process, that will strike such a chord for others, because there will be, you know, you just said there that you really, like, you heard something in what I was saying for you, and that's really, to me, that's what coaching is, right? So your marketing material then makes totally sense that it's you and your story and whatever, and people will hear it. And then if they're this is the key thing for me, if they're in a position where they want to buy, where they want some coaching, forget need. There's loads of stuff we all need, but no one wants what they need. You know, they don't respond to that. It's what they want. If they want that, and you're around, and you're connected, which is your default anyway, but it's easy to pretend it's not, then I think you've got a very, very good chance of building a thriving practice and doing really well, and that being an incredibly enjoyable thing. Now, you could take those last half dozen sentences and map those to a process that somebody will taught at a course at some point.
Yeah.
And it will be about as useful as 100 days of love when you don't really feel loving. It's like, well, what's the bloody point?
Yeah.
Why lie to yourself? Like, some days I feel like, actually not so much anymore, but do you know what I mean? It's like, why? Because I'm not going to use words to paint a world that I don't live in, so that's why I stopped myself. But it's like when you really know who you are, and I'm so fortunate to have had that experience through, you know, a lot of self-inquiry and spiritual inquiry, but when you've sat in that space of who you genuinely are, pre any of the story that you want, then any story you come up with in a moment is kind of giggle worthy. So you kind of catch yourself and you go, oh yeah, whoops, that's me showboating or whatever. That's me taking myself very seriously. That's me beating myself. Yeah, whatever. None of it particularly matters anymore, because you know at your core that the spirit or the essence or the soul that you are, and you've experienced that, but you must experience it. There's no point in nodding and having bookish knowledge of it and being able to replicate Mooji's words or Krishnamurti or whatever. That's back to knowing the recipe without being able to bake the cake. And you don't want to let your clients do that either, because eventually they'll get bored of that and they'll look for the next coach or whatever. And so you've got to ride that through and be with them. And it's just like anything, when you're talking about it from the inside out, it's just really easy because you know it inside out. I know that feeling of dropping out of thought and experiencing before any of the story kicks off. Now, I'd have talked about that maybe when we've spoken in the past. I'd have probably waffled a bit about that. But I've got a better understanding, and I guess when we connect in the future, I'll have a better understanding. And so this beautiful, the game of life, if you like, continues. So when people say, teach what you know, share what you know, that's what they mean. But when you hear that as a doctrine, it sounds like, share what I know. Okay, well, in the case of principles, I know there's mind, consciousness, and thought, and Sid said this, and it just sounds like more bookish shite. And You know, no one's going to hand you a check for 30 grand for a year or whatever on bookish shite, but they're going to get disgruntled and whatever. So you don't want to go there, in my view. You want to take people home, show them the pilot light, have them have an experience of that, and then see if it's a genuine thing that they'd like to invest in and do with you, and be open about that, however that, you know, kind of works. And so that was more opening up for me, if you like, that last thing I've been describing.
Yeah, that's perfect. And actually, as you're describing that, it's just really clear that the way you form a connection with the person and kind of show them what's possible for them and what they already know is, it's never about, a lot of people set store by confidence, and for me confidence is kind of often seen as kind of thinking, you know, sort of bigging yourself up in a way, you know, creating a construct of your personality that has got lots of good qualities or whatever, but in a way that's going to be no more effective than you know, a self-deprecating one or any other kind of one you can create. And as all that sort of falls away and that noise gets out of the way, then your ability to make a difference to people, it just really emerges, and it won't look anything like you necessarily think it will, because when you're trying to figure this out in your head, you think that you need to be a certain way or come across a certain way or have a certain professionalism or this, that and the other. And
yeah, that's lovely. I noticed the other day, it dawned on me that, well, this is the thought that went through my head, right, which I think is in the same vein as what you're saying. It was like, wow, people tell me their challenges and their difficulties like within seconds of talking to me. Wow, that's really different. And then suddenly I heard, no, it's not different. You're just listening. And it's like, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, fair point. I just, you know, and people would say, you know, when you settle, you'll see opportunities all around, and it's like, well, I'm looking. oh, I'm looking. It's like, no, no, you're really not. But something jogs you to go, oh no, I just think I am, because thinking is twinned with feeling, and that's brought into awareness with consciousness. That looks like reality to us. So we go, there, see, told you, that's how it is for me. I can live in my story. There you go. And we can't see. It's so innocent. We can't see that the words we're using are the prescription of the world we stand in, not the description of the world out there.
Yeah.
Can't see that until you see it. And when I saw that, it was like, I saw things like perception is projection, you know, from NLP and whatever, in a completely different light. And I know, this is so funny. I know that somebody will be listening to this going, oh yes, well I see that. Yes, oh well, Dave, you were, you know. And I know damn well that they're not seeing it, because I was that person.
Yeah, me too.
And I've discovered that I'm not a unique example of anything.
Yeah.
That's a really important thing as well. So I know that at all different levels, people are going to be, they will have, and like you've been doing, yeah, I thought that, this is the oneness. This is the connection. And that's just like a really important thing I wanted to touch again. It's not that I make connection or whatever, or start using bookish phrases, or what I've heard someone else saying, oh, well, we are connection. I hear so many people say that. I've heard them say, we are connection, we are love. Well, what do you mean? What does that actually mean to you? Well, stop saying what other people say, you know, until it's yours. Oh, and don't, you know, be relaxed about it. That's cool, whatever. But you can't be relaxed about it and whatever until you're relaxed about it and whatever.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is that I don't know whether plumbers have this many hangers in their business. So it's like, what is it about coaching? Well, it's self-inquiry. It's the biggest of the big. It's about seeing through the illusion back to the pure spiritual self. All forms of coaching aim at that. All forms of religion aim at that. It's about consciousness becoming expansive within you and wanting more, having discovered that more isn't out there. Yeah. So all through our youth and whatever, consciousness is exploring more being out there. It's like growing and playing, and we form identity and belief and value and all that great stuff. It's cool. And then a tipping point happens for everybody. And a lot of my clients are around this tipping point, coming through the tipping point. It took me a while to see that in process terms, that's where they are. They're tipping. So my stories of tipping really resonate for them. But genuinely, not, oh, that resonated when it didn't. It's like, yeah, they really see themselves in that story because it's where they are. And so there are your clients. So when people talk about finding your community, finding your people, they're there. But you won't see that until you see that. You just don't, you know. You can't find your car keys until you find your car keys. You can look as hard as you like for them. You won't find them until you find them. They're in your pocket all the time, or on the table in front of you, or if they're your glasses, they're on your head. So we hear all these metaphors and stories, but they don't mean anything until you've experienced it from the inside out.
Yeah. So
mostly in my work, that's where I have people look. Now, if they really don't know about business process and whatever, well, it's handy because I've got 15 years experience of that as well. Mm. So you can have the best feeling and be the calmest you like, but actually, you know, if you really don't know the ABC of a sales funnel or whatever, then it's going to be a challenge. But it needs to come that way round. That's the important part, because then you're free to use whatever, and it happens overnight.
That's so true. You're free to use whatever, and you actually know what you need then.
Yeah, and if you don't, that doesn't matter either, and you play and test it. So I suddenly spotted that I'd done something innately in the last 10 days, 2 weeks maybe, that I've tried to do, I don't know how many times, by force, if you like, over the last 2 years. So I'd seen something that I thought would be really interesting. I'd said in a group of people I know, does anybody else have this interest too? And if so, I'll start a group for it, which marketers would call creating community. Yeah. I set the group up. Within 2 days, we had 70 or 80 members. I was like, wow, well, this must be really interesting. It then occurred to me that a lot of the interest people had, I knew somebody who, if they listened to this person speak, it would clear up a load of the issues, because this had happened for me. So I said, I thought I might organize a conversation with this person. Would some people like to do that? Bang, 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 yes. Yeah. Reached out to the person, said, would you come and talk, because it had such an impact for me? I'd love to. Set it up. It had over 80% attendance from sign up to live call, which is unheard of in anything I've ever done.
Yeah.
Now, all of this, a marketer would tell you. You could go on a course and learn all of this, but it won't mean diddly squat until it comes this way around. But it's quite handy knowing this stuff.
Yeah, of course.
It's useful, but it's much better when it comes this way.
Yeah.
In this context.
Yeah. I could probably keep talking for hours, but it seems like quite a natural place to press the stop button.
Yeah, sounds good.
Was there anything else you sort of hadn't covered or said that you'd like to?
You know, the one thing that popped into my head for people was hang in there. and that I know that I know what I mean by that, actually, is that it's about this understanding of who you really are versus who you think you are. You know, the who you really are has no opinion on any of this stuff. So when I mean hang in there, you have no choice actually but to hang in there. So even people who are having a hard time, if this is work that, if you like, are really meant to do or want to do, something's going to keep you in the game. And that's been very much my experience when I thought, oh no, I don't want to do this. No, you know, there are easier ways of making money, and there are. I've got to be really honest. You know, in the world of form, there really are. But it's like, oh no, you know. But something has kept me in the game, and that something is your pilot light, your real strength, your real power, and that's what you want to inquire about. That's what you want to learn about, and all this other stuff just really drops into place when you go with that. But often when people are offering that, they're offering it in the same way that somebody would offer a 5-step process. And so the message becomes muddled, you know? Yeah. So it's like, come away with me for 3 days and I'll teach you the 10 key things to being authentic. Well, yeah, you know, awkward. And I was going to say I'm not knocking, but clearly I am. It comes across like that. And so then people go, oh, well, you know, that's just the fluffy stuff. And it's like, oh, you think? No, actually, the stuff I do on 3 or 4 day things, that could look fluffy, but that's the real science, because that cuts through the fluff of who you think you are and takes you to who you actually are. And you experience that. So it's not about rambling theory or whatever. That's about, I think I described it to somebody the other day as going hand in hand and paddling in the shallows, or searching in the rock pools to find stuff together. And that's a really easy place to operate from, because it becomes, first of all, does somebody want to do it? Secondly, do they want to do it with me? Oh, and if they do, this is what the investment would be. And it will be less costly than some, but a lot more costly than others. Well, there we are. That's like buying a car, isn't it? You can buy a car for $4,000, you can buy a car for $400,000. So we're all used to that. That's really easy to deal with. So my car sells at X. And then sometimes the people are really cool and they say, well, I don't want to do X, but I could do Y. Can you do that? And you think, well, actually, I think this is going to be really cool. I'll do Y. And that's really normal as well. So, you know, take it seriously and not too seriously. Hang in there. Don't hang in there. Yeah. It's hard to pinpoint something that's already there.
Yeah. And everything that we think we're looking for, ideas, direction, confidence, inspiration, ability to take action, these are all things that we fall into the trap of thinking we need to work on when they're just things that emerge as, like, they're kind of emergent properties of kind of seeing through our stories and getting in touch with our inner pilot light, I suppose.
That's it. I really like that. They are. I love that phrase. Emerging properties. That's exactly what they are. They're shows up in the fullness of time in this line of inquiry, and it really doesn't matter if you go, you know, whatever, because any harm that you think can come to you will be thought. It will feel really real. There's no doubt about that, because that's how the system works. Yeah. So you know, you'll think, oh, this is the end of the whatever, and it will feel that that's true, and you might act on that. But somewhere behind that is this thing that it's not unfolding. Actually, it never went anywhere. It's the witness of all of this. That's the really exciting place to me. It's not that, you know, the story's unfolding, really. There's a witness of the story unfolding. So it's like, who's that? Go and look at that. So the stories I've told today, like the stories of me transforming on whatever, that's really not who I am either. It's like, who is the witness of all of those stories changing? Because that's where you want to look. But the minute you try and label it, that becomes part of the story.
Yeah.
So it's like, so who's the thing that's witnessing the witnessing? And back and back and back and back until you really start to have a visceral experience. Is that the right word? You know, an actual experience of that pureness of self. And that's amazing. That's like the best gift ever. You know, I always dreamt of having the best product ever to sell, and it's like you want the best product ever. That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's great. Love it. I'll stop talking. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's all good. It makes me think about the fact that we're going to be doing that for the rest of our days, aren't we? Creating and dismantling our stories, and dismantling that story and creating a new one, because that's inevitable. That's part of the system too. But it's just either kind of getting flashes or spending time or however it works for you in what's before that.
Yeah. And even just like the tiniest glimpse of an experience of that is magical. It really is. And I remember the first time I really stopped thinking I was experiencing it and experienced it. And whole new universe opens up.